Okay, good day and welcome CAEM members and guests. I'm Tony Gallagher with GS and the chair of the CAEM Communications Committee, along with my co-chair Nicole Jeffrey with the Canadian Produce Marketing Association. Today, Nicole and I are privileged to have some time with one of our members who just recently successfully executed a trade show at the Toronto Congress Centre in Toronto from August 22nd to the 24th. Michelle Kaufman of MRK Communications, representing the Association of Footwear and Apparel Canada, or simply AFA Canada, which had formerly been marketed as the Toronto Shoe Show, is here with us today to share her experience with us. For those of you unfamiliar, AFA is Canada's premier resource for retailers and wholesalers in the footwear, apparel, and accessories industries. The AFA Expo is a B2B trade show which typically occurs twice a year in February and August at the Toronto Congress Centre with over 250 exhibitors and 1,000 attendees. Welcome, Michelle. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I suppose my first question to you would be that if, despite what would have seemed to be such a cautionary or apprehensive time to hold a live event in person, how, when, what made you decide to move forward?
That's a good question. And thanks for asking it. So we had been thinking about, as we were watching numbers go down and vaccination rates go up, we were thinking, I wonder if it's going to be okay for us to run a show in August. And what we didn't want to happen was to August come around and everything would be really okay, like the numbers would be low and we would have thought, oh darn, we could have had a show. So we always had that in the back of our mind, and we were really waiting for the Ontario government to open up to stage 3, which they did, if you recall, the first week in July, I think it was, maybe the last week in June, and we decided to just go for it, which was about a week after we had decided to open up a virtual show because we weren't really sure how it was going to go, and we knew that we needed to do something for our community, our fashion community. So yeah, that gave us 5 weeks to build a show ultimately. Yeah.
Definitely a tighter timeline than you're used to.
Yeah.
So with that sort of different timeline, how was the decision to go ahead to in-person show communicated to exhibitors, and what was your sales process like?
So while we were in that very early stage of even before the government opened up to stage 3, I had reached out to some of our key exhibitors, some of the larger footprint ones, understanding their sales cycle, and to get their interest level, if we were to hold a show, would they consider exhibiting? And we gauged it by that, waited for it to happen and for it to be opened up to stage 3. And then we sent out some fun, humorous e-blasts to our community, all the while keeping in mind that we have to do this responsibly. And we opened up registration. Again, thanks to our registration partners, Connexus. They really worked hard on this with us because, again, we only had 5 weeks to do it. Once it was open, registration started to come in right away. So it was exciting to see that, but people were cautious, right? So no one booked the same size booth as they had before unless it was a 10 by 10. And we had, in our communications out, we had been encouraging people exhibitors to book a 10 by 20 at minimum. We only had a couple of 10 by 10s. And we reduced our pricing 44%, actually. Our booth rental fee was 44% less than it was at our last show, which was February 2020. So, and we reduced the booth package as well, the booth offering, but still registrations came in. Our community is tactile. They need to be in front of customers. The virtual thing for fashion wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. So
It's definitely a very in-person industry, and it sounds like they were eager to get back to things. But it sounds like you were able to sort of do a little bit of preliminary planning as you were going into it. But especially with that reduced timeline, what sort of changes to the design and the structure of the show did you make compared to a typical year?
Well, the one thing that we did lop off right away was the hard copy show guide, which we had been starting to move over to the show app, I want to say February 2019, maybe even August 2018 show. We started to move into the electronic show app, but still that wasn't being adopted enough. But this show, with no time, we had to lop off that show guide piece, which was a little bit problematic for brand advertising because there was no opportunity for our exhibitors to do any brand advertising to attendees. That being said, everything was done online. Our registration was done online, and again, it worked really well. In terms of show execution, we decided that we've got to do this bare bones, and we marketed it the AFA Expo Minimalist Market, which is something I probably should have said at the beginning. Because we wanted to put in their heads right away that you don't have, please don't go and spend a bundle on your booth, because typically our show was pretty attractive looking, red carpet aisles and big beautiful booths. It looked like a showroom might look. We wanted to make sure that our exhibitors didn't feel they needed to go and spend the extra dollars on that. So we automatically said no carpet. If they wanted booth carpet, they could order it on their own. We didn't, we used to provide lighting to, like additional lighting besides the building lights to our exhibitors. We lopped that off as well. Again, because we wanted to convey that minimalist piece. And when it came to it, most of our booths, I'd say half of our booths were pipe and drape. Many of them did come in with some kind of a structure that they used to have, hard wall, maybe some shelving. When you're dealing in shoes, they really do need shelving. I mean, right? They really do need shelving. Yeah.
Not sign hooks.
Yeah. Exactly. But we didn't want them to have to spend a fortune. So those were some key elements that we changed around. And the other thing that we had done that we had never done before was a scheduled move-in. And this is something that I was a little concerned about in terms, I was a little concerned about having a scheduled move-in because they weren't used to that, but I was also very concerned about the free-for-all that show move-in and move-out can be. And then I sat back and I thought about it, and we spoke to our suppliers, and I spoke to our board president, Stuart Sugar, and I said, everyone is used to our protocols now in everything we do, whether it's going to the drugstore or the shopping center or even walking in a park and having to deke around people. We're all used to that, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. A scheduled move-in was fantastic, and I'm going to have a scheduled move-in going forward. It was amazing. Now, granted, we were half the exhibitors that we used to have, so we didn't have the amount of people, but I was worried about that organized chaos, and everyone was respectful. Everyone. There was no issues at all.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone's used to getting a different set of instructions, and usually how are you proceeding in and out of the building is sort of one of those key things that they're used to having. You mentioned there's a virtual component as well to the show, so it sort of happened in tandem. So what did this involve, and how did it sort of mesh with your in-person component?
So we were very apprehensive at the beginning of the pandemic to do a virtual trade show. We just thought, no way, it's just not going to make sense. Our larger brands figured it out early on and found other ways to do their seasonal selling. And it was all through either Zoom or through various sales platforms that they were purchasing, to use. And we held off. And we really didn't want to go down that route, but we got scared and we thought we're going to have to do something for August 2021. So we did. And we used Connexus registration because it worked, because they've always been our registration partner, and that platform worked for us. And we opened up registration, and we had several takers on it. But our main goal for that, because then we got concerned, because when we opened up in-person registration, the virtual tapered off, but we weren't going to have a show app. And we weren't going to have a show guide, so we decided to use the virtual platform as our show guide. We were able then to drive traffic to the virtual platform for those few exhibitors that were on it, encouraging our attendees to go on there and to see the brand's listing and to see the reps, and they could certainly communicate that way with our virtual reps. Mm-hmm. We did not have a big screen, a big monitor at the show of the virtual. Had we not moved forward with an in-person, we would have had more educational components on our virtual. When the pandemic first started, that's what we did. We immediately just flipped right over to education, and we just created a Retail Next webinar series.
So it's there to sort of enhance your in-person.
Yeah, to enhance the in-person. But there was no time then to develop the educational component, which would have been on the virtual. But we essentially used it as our show guide. And we've thought about moving forward with that sort of a thing. We're not like as a 365-day thing to use for our exhibitors, our attendees, our exhibitors. We're not sure yet, but it worked. It just helped us utilize both things that we had invested in, and we were driving traffic to the virtual platform at the same time.
Yeah, seems like a good use of that. Going back to your in-person event, what sort of safety protocols were in place for your attendees and exhibitors, and how did you do the enforcement? I know that's always a challenging aspect as well.
Again, the only time I was worried about enforcement is with the EACs and delivery guides. I really was not terribly concerned about our exhibitors and our attendees. Everyone's been through such a hard time, and these are business people. This wasn't a consumer show. This is business to business, and business people know what needs to be done to open up the world again and to end this nightmare we've all been living in. So it was more the delivery guys I was concerned about. Our show also happened just before the Ontario government said that they will start mandating vaccine passports. So I was not comfortable asking about the vaccine question at all. So we used every day, every morning, everyone who we were expecting would receive, like anyone who was registered, would receive that government website link where it's like the screening that we've all seen everywhere you go, right? And then they would have to do that and show up with the little check mark and show it on their phone. For badging, it was the same thing. They would pre-register and they would just get the QR code and their badge would print out themselves, and that was self-managed, and they would self-manage their own holders and everything. For the delivery guys, it was a little bit more challenging. It was. You're dealing with language issues, and it's a little bit crazy on a loading dock, but we made it work. And Toronto Congress Centre as well had a big sign of the same screening questions that was on the platform and the government platform, and also that we've all seen everywhere. You go to the dentist, you know, whatever. So in terms of distancing, we had stated only 2 people per 10 by 10 booth space. And then throughout the show, we had funny little signs just reminding people to like stand back. But we didn't want to take a hard approach. We wanted it to be gentle and friendly because, again, we weren't concerned about any people being disruptive on this, not with our community. We just kind of knew that. But we wanted to be kind. So we wouldn't say masks are mandatory. We said be kind and mask up. I had, you know, and for distancing, we use these funny signs to just try and remind people to, like, you know, stay distanced. And if they were in their booth alone or with their coworker and they knew each other was double vaxxed, they could take off their masks. Justin and I were behind the counter. It's really hard to wear a mask all day. Oh my gosh, it's really hard. So we took our masks off when we were with each other. But all communications with people really you just had to keep their masks on. And we also scanned in and out on that first day of the show. So again, stage 3 was 1,000 people maximum indoors. So knowing our show, knowing our people, I wasn't terribly concerned about a super spreader event, large crowds, but yeah,
a lot of protocols that you were sort of mandating as people were coming in. I know your capacity was sort of less than that maximum, but you were tracking quite well.
Yeah, and our security helped us a lot. We had wider aisles. We had the 20-foot. We had 3 20-foot aisles. The rest were 10-foot, but it was spread apart as we could manage, making like on the floor plan. You know, hand sanitizers everywhere. But again, guys, they're used to it. And again, it wasn't a consumer show. So we knew we would be able to control it. I was worried. Of course I was worried. Those 2 weeks after the show, I was kind of worried, oh my God, am I going to get a call about someone? But haven't heard anything yet.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you were able to put all those protocols in place and, you know, to be able to communicate them in a way that made sense for the audience that you knew you had. The feedback that you received for the show, both from your attendees and exhibitors, how was that?
Well, I guess what I can say is it was really hard for everybody not to be allowed to hug, because everyone that came, attendees and retailers, they were just so happy. No complaints. Everyone was just so happy to be together again, to see each other's stuff coming out, the colors and everything. And honestly, we got quality buyers to this show. We didn't get a lot of the tire kickers. Our attendee numbers were way down than and it wasn't unexpected. And yes, we know a lot of retailers closed across the country, but the buyers that showed up, we have some exhibitors that did phenomenally well. They opened up new accounts. So the mood was good. The vibe was good because everyone was just so happy. Also knowing that we're not out of it yet, you know? Right?
That's great. Well, Michelle, this is a really, really great information for our members of CAEM or anyone, quite frankly, involved in organizing a live event. Congratulations. My final question would really be based on this experience, what advice would you offer to others planning their shows?
First of all, I really want to extend a thank you to show suppliers everywhere, because as show managers, we know that we can't pull these things off without our show suppliers. And in my case, the board of directors as well. But stay calm. Like, don't worry about, now again, I wasn't a consumer show, but stay calm and just remember always that everyone has been through this. It's not new. People have gone grocery shopping throughout the pandemic, so they're accustomed to all the protocols. Stay calm and be kind. Like, it's much more well received if the message is gentler and softer, because they already know they have to wear masks. They already know they have to distance. So my advice is to just stay calm, know your audience, and communicate to them well, and be kind. I mean, it might just sound kind of fluffy and a little hippy-skippy. Well, that's me. But it's just, yeah, I really, and also I would say, don't go bare minimum if you can with your show. Go bare minimum. The world has changed. We're not going back to the way we were. Let's change the narrative and start moving forward on this.
Fantastic. Many of us, Michelle, have been waiting for an example such as yours. So kudos to you. Congratulations. Stay calm and carry on. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your valuable experience with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for your interest. Thank you.